Thank you, all of you. First of all, it's nice to meet you. I haven't met any of you in person. A few of you I've had the opportunity to have a call with, and I'm really excited to do this. My background is also in a very male-dominated industry. I started in the music industry, and I was often the only woman in the room. The difference between what I was doing and being in the music industry, but that, you know, with the three of you, is that your clientele is also mainly men. And I think that that is a really big, you know, kind of differentiator for a few reasons, which we'll get into. But I would love for you to all start. In fact, I wanted to actually, you know, I did my little research right before this. And, you know, Juliet was talking about 1 in 5 women being one of the only women in the room. In your three particular industries, I think aviation is like 7% or 5% women. Automotive is in the low 20s, and soccer I couldn't even find that statistic. You know, mainly because they were talking about, you know, the most recent like men versus women soccer players. So it's, you know, it's also it's very low. But I wanted to, so knowing all of that, to ask each of you, and we can start with Joy and then Kate and then Leona, why did you get into this industry? Like a short like thing, why? And did you know when you were getting into it that it was a male dominated industry?
Well, thank you, JJ. To start off, to answer that question, you know, it was so many years ago, over 30 years ago, that I joined Ford Motor Company in the auto industry. And to be honest with you, it was the company that I felt like I was joining. I think I was probably a bit naive that I was joining, you know, a male dominated industry. I was looking for a really good company, and Ford Motor Company was like number 3 on the Fortune 500 back then, and just a really great American brand. So I was really excited to join the company from that perspective. And it was probably naive to the fact that it was going to be so male dominated.
All right. Kate?
Yeah, so I certainly knew what I was getting into. I grew up in the New York area and had been an athlete growing up my entire life. So I will say a good example is my second job out of college. I worked for the New York Yankees and felt like I had a great foundation of baseball, certainly knew what I was doing on the business front from a sponsorship perspective, but did hit an immediate barrier where 6 months in, my boss at the time pulled me aside and said, Kate, you've got great sales experience. I have no issues with where you're going on that route, but you really need to learn baseball. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, my boss at the time, his name was Brian. I said, Brian, I grew up with all sisters. I think I know enough. And he said, you really got to spend time and study it. And it was a real awakening on just not only on the business side, how male oriented it is, but just as a sport, how male oriented it is.
Right. Yeah. Leona?
Hi, thank you, JJ. I think for me, it was rather to get into aviation was a very natural transition. My career, I have a very strong math background. It was finance background. I started on Wall Street in finance, actually financing aircraft and other assets. So I did that for over a decade. And then that's how I got into VistaJet, where we own and finance our own aircraft and provide that to our customers. I think for me, for our industry, and as well as on Wall Street, it's about making the numbers work. And lots of our customers also, when they're buying into our model, especially, they love to talk about numbers. And that's how I got transitioned into this world. I think from the finance world, and VistaJet is, like you said it was 7%, right? In the aviation industry as in general. I actually didn't think, I thought about it, how few women are in this industry. And actually at VistaJet, I just got a stats today. We have about 34% of women actually are in management positions at VistaJet. So as a company, we have, despite the rest of the industry in aviation, as a company, we have a lot of women in management positions. And that's, anyway, sorry, I just, that's how I got into this industry. I didn't really think about it while there are so few girls in this industry.
Right. No, that's good, because a lot of women, if you can't see it, you can't be it, right? And so it prevents a lot of women into the entry, which I want to get to a little bit later. So, it's been interesting though, because, like Joy, you said, you kind of like, you just walked in. I was kind of the same way. When ignorance is bliss, like, I mean, whatever, it's what I like. That's cool, but, now we have a lot of data, right? We have a lot of data that says how few women are in certain industries. And we have a lot of data saying, you know what, they aren't being paid the same when they are here. And then, we've had Me Too and Black Lives Matter and, showing all this disproportion, knowing that your industries are also, the clients are really men. Like, do you think that with all of that data, with all of that publicity, that your industries are really caring about making sure there's more women of color in these executive ranks? And how they're changing, like what's happening in the industries? I'll throw it to you first, Kate. How about that?
Yeah, so I'd say on sports, I'm really hopeful at the moment, and you've seen the wave of Me Too and certainly everything that's gone on in the country this year. I think really put an onus on how we're treating diversity and specifically women in sports. We were fortunate back in the spring to have Kathy Engelbert as the first female commissioner of the WNBA on here. I think as a whole, you're seeing a spotlight on women at all different levels on the executive business front, be it at the commissioner level, certainly on the field or pitch or whatever lane you're in. So I'm encouraged by it, but again, it's something that we've really got to keep our foot on the gas and encourage and be filling up that pipeline with fresh water and women and supporting them no matter what route they want to take within the sports industry. Right. And what about you, Liana?
I think for our industry, I will speak for VistaJet. I think VistaJet has done, we're a global company. And for us, diversity is very important, not only from a men and women point of view, but also from nationality. We have over 56 different nationalities working with us, people speaking all sorts of languages. And we have 46% of our employees are women, and over 30% women in management positions. I think for me personally, when I'm hiring, for example, I try to make sure that I have pipeline, like Kate mentioned, coming in. And I always encourage people when they, also including my daughter, I encourage her, what's important, like you mentioned, I think if you turn on the news nowadays or you read the stats, it's very daunting and it's intimidating. Then you look at it, you're like, oh wow, there's so many challenges. How am I going to do this? And they're only like you said in the boardroom, there's one woman out of 5, and we're getting paid probably 75 cents on the dollar compared to male equivalent. So I think if you look at the numbers, it's very discouraging. But I think what I would always say is that if passion comes first, I think, and you need to be good at something so that you can really, you're really good at your job and you can power forward, and then you just focus on your passion, and then I think you will earn respect, and then you will do well. Mm-hmm. And I think for women, for example, as a woman, you shouldn't look at aviation and say that, oh wow, I love a challenge, but I don't have much interest in aviation. Then probably this is not something you should get into. But if this is something you love, you should evaluate passion first, and then you can focus on being great at it. But I agree with Kate. I think focusing on pipeline is very important. So you can have that pipeline for the management and then mentorship for our next leadership, like when you can expect more and more women.
Right. What about you, Joy? How do you feel like your industry is dealing with these enlightenment?
I definitely think it's intensified. It's been a focus of the company for years, and we've made, I'll call it incremental progress. But recently it has intensified, and to Kate's point, with the See Her movements and the Think See All movements, and this year with the actually injustice and things that have occurred, even the multicultural, a lot of intensity. And the thing that I can really point to now that I haven't always been able to, that I think is really powerful for the automotive industry, is it's a business imperative, because the growth that we're seeing now in the auto industry is coming from multicultural audiences, which include, of course, women, African American, Asians. That's where most of the growth is. So we as a company and anyone in the industry needs to represent the customers they serve. And that's, to me, is very powerful about the business imperative of it.
You know, that's a great point. And I read, you know, a lot about you all and Joy in particular. First of all, you're the president of the Lincoln Company and the CMO of Ford. So how do you do it? But also like how you have two roles that are like a really, you know, Fortune 500 company, but also, you know, you really got to where you are and, you know, set yourself apart because you're really having conversations with people and really listening, right? And, you know, and that is traditionally known as, you know, kind of a female trait, right? Community, listening, you know, learning from that. And so oftentimes, you know, like in the music industry, there's been, you know, very few women and it's kind of the same women. And one of the ways that you can stay in the room, right? Because you might be the only woman in the room, but you also want to stay there, right? And to stay there, oftentimes you just don't call out that you're a woman, right? And so I was using this reference of the show Veep, which I loved so much. And when she was running for president, her, you know, right-hand minion guy was like, you know, you should run on the platform, you're a woman. And she says, you can't say that. No one wants to know I'm a woman, you know? And so now in particular, I think for a long time, you couldn't really talk about it, right? So Joy, back to you, like, what do you like, do you feel comfortable now saying like, and standing up for like, wait, I think that we need to focus on women? And is it on you, you know, as the woman, like the women are always going to have to like take care and remind the company. It's like, let's think about the ladies, you know?
Yeah, you know, I think that's really evolving too, but I also think it is my role. And, you know, when you're the only woman in the room and it's intimidating, I think that's what you have to look at. Hey, I'm here not just for myself, but I'm representing all these other women. And, you know, I've heard people say, you know, you're the wedge in the door and you want to keep it open when you're the only woman in the room so you can get more people to come through that door with you. So I've always taken that responsibility very heavily. And one to show up, you know, very authentic and prepared and thoughtful and everything I say in that room, because, you know, you're being judged. It's just unconscious bias. It's just going to be there. You're going to be judged. So how you show up, how prepared you are when you show up is so important. And, you know, to your point about two jobs, of course, it's all the team, right? You know, as a leader, it's the team that is really important to you. And I will say, sometimes I look at them and say, okay, I don't do either one of them well because I'm stretched so far. But again, it's just leaning into the team and going after it each day. And as Leona said, you know, have a passion to deliver. And if you really stay focused on that, to your point, the men around you notice. You know, it's,
right. Yeah, same question, Kate, like to you about, you know, being the only woman in the room. Like, do you feel like you're the one you can talk about it, and are you the one that's kind of holding the bag on that to make sure it's moving forward?
Yeah, well, I love what Joy just said, and I think it's our duty to lead in that manner and to be bringing women up under us, and certainly not afraid to pipe up on opinions within rooms that feel like they're male heavy. I also try not to look at it as easier said than done sometimes, but as male female. I mean, there've been some brilliant women executives that I've worked for that it's never been in a meeting where I've gone, okay, now female speaking. I just think that they demand that respect, which is really inspiring, and certainly goals when you're sitting in, you know, positions that you want to grow into. So I think it's our duty, and I think it's all relative certainly to the company and the situation and how that company is also managing women executives.
Right. Leona?
I think, first of all, I really like what Joy used as a metaphor, said that you're the wedge. You have to keep the door open so that there will be more women coming. Definitely, we need to show up, and we need to make sure that people know that we're there, and then you would demand that respect, especially I have to say for my industry that we're selling to, like you mentioned, you touch up on it, most of our clients, over 90% are male. And now, even from a business point of view, I'm trying to grow that clientele. You know, the day that I see that half of my clients are women, that's the day that we know that women made it in the boardroom. Where I wanted to, you know, make sure that I play. So I reach out to female executives, and I think definitely I try to say that, you know, from a female point of view, I think here's how we can appeal to female. I think definitely there's a voice, and I definitely, I think, show up, and then there's no reason to hide the fact that I'm a woman, and to do that, because it's important. and that I'm there, and I wanted to show that to women that I'm mentoring or that work in my team, that they will be able to do the same.
Right. Yeah, I was reading about your daughter and how she said she wants to be a boss lady now.
Yeah, that was last year. I think now her goal is just that she can go out freely and play in the park.
Mine just always wants to be a unicorn, but you know, while being the only woman in the room, you usually are the unicorn, right? So and so, you know, in moving this all forward, you know, look, there's all these statistics as well that back this up, that if, you know, there's more women in the room, like 25% in an executive, then you get a 22%, you know, return versus an 11. And if the third of them are women, it's a 26% return, you know. And so are these conversations that are happening in your industry? I mean, are people understanding that part too? Not just like the negative, like, let's just fill a quota, but like this, you know, having more women actually gets you better results, which I think is a great way for, you know, businesses to understand the needs for more women there. Any of you can answer that or talk on that if you want.
I'll jump in on that because we're not there at that level. And I think that's an aspiration. But what we have evolved to is similar to what Leona was talking about, is the voice of the customer, and looking at where we over-index or, you know, where the opportunities are for growth, and making sure we're representative of the customer, and also the brand tonality, and making sure, you know, Ford is a very large brand, and the bandwidth of it and the mass market nature means that we need to be talking to all customers.
Yeah.
And that's where it's really kind of come up, and we've talked about the importance of it. But I think it's powerful, the numbers that you've quoted, and I've seen those as well. And I think it's time to put those in front of the team, right?
Yeah. So, you know, back to we touched on, you know, pipeline. How do we get that pipeline? How do we make sure that they're coming up, knowing that, you know, we just don't enter the room the same as men, you know?
I think I'll speak to that one. I think for aviation, lots of people, when they think about aviation, they think about engineering, pilots. There's a lot of things that are involved in private aviation. For example, there's sales, there's cabin crew, there's private dining. We work with hotels, all this other service industry, and there's ground handling, there's customer service. So there's a lot that are involved in every single flight. I think what aviation in general is a very niche industry. What we do is that for every year we have air shows. And actually every year the air shows, there's student day that we open to university school students, that they would come in, and then we will have panels and they will ask questions. And I think in the past couple years, for the A-base, E-base, and also MBAA, so those are the aviation shows happen in different continents, Europe, America, and then Asia Pacific. There's specific days for college girls, so they will ask questions about aviation. So I think that's the most direct that the entire industry, aviation, is trying to reach out to the next generation and the pipeline, that where we can educate them about what aviation, private aviation is about, and then encourage them to come and you know, try, for example, do internship in the summer, and with VistaJet offered those opportunities as well. Those are where we're doing educating those pipeline. And then inside a company, I think it's important to have mentorship. When there's new you know, new blood coming in, they will find a mentor. So for VistaJet, we have peer-to-peer mentor, as well as managers. And then the next level mentorship is very important to make sure, like you said, if you're in the room, we want to make sure that you can stay in the room.
Right. What about you, Kate?
Yeah, so sports has evolved so much. I think about it a lot 30 years ago. What I do in working on global rights partnerships with brands didn't exist. So I think the great thing about sports right now is it is so broad, and there's so many entry points for women. And I think getting that message out is really important, especially at an entry level role. One of the things I'm really proud about, so Liverpool Football Club is owned by Fenway Sports Group, owners of the Boston Red Sox, and we just rolled out during COVID, which we've all seen accelerate quite a few trends, a digital classroom series for students that is a free offering right now, which is really great to give people who might not have had a chance at an internship because no one was having interns in offices, a chance to really learn about sports, learn about the business of sports, and see which routes they can take. And with that, we've certainly got an onus on getting females into this program to hopefully get them up in different parts of the Fenway Sports Group business.
Amazing. Joy, you guys have anything?
Just a couple things, would be incremental is, we've had to, in order to find, talented females in a male dominant, we've had to pull from different skill teams actually.
Right.
So we've had a few engineers come into marketing. We've had some engineers go into purchasing and then into management. And obviously they had a great math background. They're going to be analytically driven and, have the aptitude to teach them the business. And so that's a lot of, looking across the company. And then I also do some recruiting for the University of Michigan, the Ross School of Business. And when I talk to them, because we do a great job hiring engineers, no problem there, right? It's trying to get the business students and getting more women. And I talk about the jobs that you can have inside the big company, whether you want to be in IT or public relations or software or marketing or finance. I mean, there's just every function is in a big company, and international experience, and really try to look at the jobs, kind of like I did when I came versus thinking about the male dominated industry, look at the jobs that are available and the opportunity.
Right. Yeah, because there's so much you could do, right? And you can help them.
Right.
You know what? You probably don't, maybe you don't like this one, but let's try over here to keep you in the company. So one
Right.
last question from panelists, and then we're done already, although I could talk to you ladies forever, is, and Joy, you kind of mentioned it, and Leona a little bit too, about adapting your products or experiences to appeal more to the female customer. What are you all doing for that? Like, for cars, for me, it's like, where do I put my purse? Like, give me a place to put my purse, okay?
I got to jump right on that one because we designed a space in the Navigator specifically for a place to put your purse, and it was through ethnography and spending a lot of time with customers, and that's what women say.
Yes.
I put my purse. So we actually created that space, and we need to do more of those things because 80% of women influence car purchases. So we got to make sure we're listening to the right people sometimes, right? And that's something we've been doing, but we got to do more of.
Right. What about you, Kate, with sports?
Yeah, so sports, as you ladies all know, we have loads and loads of female fans all throughout the world. I think football specifically is really interesting because it is so universal in nature and just the appeal of it. It doesn't matter if you have a $4 rag football or a $200 FIFA football. It appeals to everyone, which I think a lot can be learned from football and certainly Liverpool. But one of the things I'd say from a clientele perspective and just being more female focused is I have loved the amount of, especially within the States, brands that are pumping dollars behind women's sports. It's just really encouraging to see men's sports and just platform development under that in terms of women's empowerment. I think grassroots sports programs is great. And the more that we can do that, the more that will grow, I think, female interest across the board.
Right. And Leona, yours is, particularly unique in that to rent a private jet, you have to have a lot of money, or you have to be in a position, that there's not as many women. And then often if you are that woman, you're usually a little more cautious about spending money, right? So how are you adapting that and trying to get more female clients? So proudly be one, by the way.
So first of all, I'd like to say that we have inside our jets, there are plenty of space that's designed for you to put your purse. And we, so for VistaJet, we're very, very much focused on in-flight service, and that appeal to our male clientele as well as female clientele. We have special programs that are designed for families. For example, we have the only kids program in the sky. It's called Adventures in the Sky. That are catered to young children. Our entire cabin crew actually are trained with Northern College in London. They have childcare ability. We also have a Vista Pet, a very comprehensive pet program for pet traveling. And we have wellness program. You could do yoga in the sky, and we have all sorts of programs to accommodate to all sorts of clientele, and including the amenities that we use on board. Some of them help with your skin hydration. I think those you could say is designed specifically to females. It could be for the lead passengers, or it could be for lead passengers' family. Like Joy mentioned, believe it or not, even though 90% of our clientele is the lead passenger, the person that signed on the documents are men, but in a lot of cases, I need to get exact stats that is the decision maker that they are going with us is a female.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make sure that, for example, from the color scheme to our aircraft, including the onboard cocktail and what we serve on the napkin, the coaster, they're all very specifically designed from an aesthetic point of view to appeal to our female flyers.
I love it. When I was at Rock Nation, I oftentimes would get a mani-pedi in my office, which was glass, while on conference calls, because who has time? And people are like, what is it? I'm like,
awesome.
Men get their hair done often in their office. Why couldn't I do that?
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody can steal it. Well, ladies, that is our time. Thank you so much. This was amazing. And everybody power forward. All right. Bye.
Nice to meet you.
JJ.
Thank you.
JJ. Thank you.